I said it last night, I'll say it again. Last night, we got robbed of an incredible comeback performance win against Aston Villa. But outside of that disappointment from that VAR decision, the reaction we saw in the second half from the team, this is the type of reaction that we're hoping now we can continue for the remainder of this season at least, because these guys came to play with a lot of pride. In today's 5 Things We Learned video, I'm here to discuss all the massive key talking points from yesterday's game. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit that like button, of course, and most importantly, share your thoughts and opinions too. So let's get straight into things now. And for the first thing we've learned, is Mudryk good enough for this level? I can't believe I'm saying this. Last month was a pretty promising month for Mudryk, and your hopes that in April he'd be pushing on right now, he'd be feeling that confidence, and he'd be stepping and raising his game up. But I have to say, after getting more consistent minutes this month, it has been one of his most ineffective months since signing for us. And I felt like his game versus Aston Villa yesterday, it was really showing us some worrying signs about how his teammates seem to lack a bit of faith and confidence in Mudryk. Now statistically, we focus about 40% of our attacks down that right hand side, with only 23% down that left hand side. This stat grew and grew as the game was going on, and in the second half, nearly everything we did mainly came down that right hand side. I think this is further evidenced by the passing clusters in last night's game, where you can see for yourself where the direction of most of these passes are actually going down. Now when we see the territory of possession, you're noticing that Mudryk is that little red circle on the left channel, and actually Cucurella has more of a distance and area that he had to cover, and I'll be discussing Cucurella later on in this video, so stay tuned for that. But what I found pretty interesting is that out of possession, you're noticing that Mudryk is a lot deeper compared to Cucurella, and the reason for that was that he was a turnover merchant in last night's game. He was constantly and regularly losing possession of the ball, and you have to realize how frustrating that is for the rest of his teammates, because that means that when they step out of position, of course, to try and create moves and plays, and he's regularly losing possession of the ball and getting turned over, that puts the team under a lot of pressure, and suddenly there's an ocean of space for Aston Villa to exploit us down that left hand side. And I think it's no surprise that Mudryk had to go on tons of sprints to run back into position to try and make up for these constant possession losses throughout the game. I think it's no surprise that in the second half, Pochettino decided to invert Cucurella. That was a key thing, and this allowed us to have better support down the left hand side, better passing options as well too, and he decided to have Mudryk be the guy isolated out wide in the left hand side, instead of Cucurella holding the width, with Mudryk finding himself in the pockets of space in that first half, being pretty ineffective. I guess it's no surprise that once we had Cucurella kind of being an extra presence in midfield, we had better protection, we had better balance, and Caicedo and Conor Gallagher could affect the game in Aston Villa's half and play a lot more box to box. And I think it's no surprise that this is why it seemed, especially in the second half, players seem to be reluctant to want to pass the ball to Mudryk, and to be honest, I don't really blame them for that. It's been one of the constant parts of his game throughout this month. He's regularly getting dispossessed, his decision making's wrong, he's too slow on the ball, it's like he hasn't thought about his next move most times before he receives. His dribbling threat is pretty inconsistent. You can't rely upon him to get past his man consistently, and that kind of affects what the rest of his teammates can do, because you might think to yourself, you know what, I can't make that run into space, because if Mudryk loses the ball, we're going to be exposed behind. I think Aston Villa tried to take advantage of this in the first half. They scored 2 goals from creating, opportunities down our left hand side, and then overloading us with the opposite side where they were looking to take their shots. And it's getting quite difficult now to really understand what the future is saying now for Mudryk. Now, on one hand, is he feeling the lack of confidence from his teammates? Is it a lot of nerves in this game? The lack of confidence. For me, this wouldn't surprise me, but listen, I don't have the answers here. I'm trying to think and understand what the situation could be, why Mudryk is so constantly hot and cold. I've always personally felt like you have to really simplify the game for someone like Mudryk. You have to give him that partner in crime down that left hand side, because one of the main criticisms of his game from consecutive managers now is that lack of football IQ, that lack of decision making and understanding when to do things at the right time in the right areas. You'll constantly see him taking shots off balance, constantly losing the ball with these silly cute passes into no one. He looks like he hides because he doesn't use his pace in behind enough for someone so fast. You think he would be one of the constant outlets for this team, right? Yet he never is. So I have to say that it's not looking great. I'm not too sure what's happening right now. Let's wait and see. Fingers crossed, I hope he can turn things around, and then it's like, you know what, we had to struggle through these early years of Mudryk, but he was able to produce something. But then when you compare him to your Pulisics, your Hudson-Odois, and many players we've seen out that left-hand side, myself, he's by far one of the weakest players I've seen. And, you know, the patience you have for players like this, it does get thinner and thinner as time goes on. So that's the first thing we've learned out the way. And for the second thing we've learned, Caicedo cooked Aston Villa last night. It was one of his best performances playing for us this season, and with this performance it encapsulates everything great about what a box-to-box Caicedo could bring to this team on a more regular basis. And it's why I constantly make these comparisons to a Michael Essien, because these are the type of midfield players that can be molded into anything because they can kind of do everything. I mean, you're seeing some of these passes, Caicedo linking the play with short, medium, long-range passes. I mean, look at this reverse ball that literally takes out like 3 Aston Villa players, and he's constantly kick-starting the next phase of the attack. He can kick-start attacks. You know, he receives quite well. He's got the good aggression as well to win these duels back, break the play up. And I feel like he's slowly getting a bit better and more consistent there. And obviously the guy can pass. I mean, a great ball in behind to find Nico Jackson. And I just think that he's starting to get more impressive and impressive. Now, it wasn't the easiest start for his career at this football club. He didn't have a pre-season. He missed a lot of pre-season due to this whole transfer saga whilst at Brighton. And he had a bit of little injury issues at the start. So it was always going to be a very slow start for his career here. But I feel like he's really shown that he's getting past that right now. And now that he has a Conor Gallagher beside him, now that the injured Enzo Fernandez is not beside him, I feel like Caicedo now can focus more on his football. And I think this is why we're seeing more confidence in his game right now, knowing that he doesn't have to maybe like support players, knowing the fact that he's not being constantly isolated by himself in this massive ocean of space between the rest of our midfields and our defense. And I think you're seeing a better balance now that Gallagher's alongside him, and now that Poch is now addressing the balance by playing a Madueke down that right hand side to hold the width. But I just constantly will use this comparison to Michael Essien because I feel like Caicedo has that potential to really grow to become an elite midfield player. I mean, there isn't many things he can't do. The guy is so impressive whilst on the ball. He helps us play forwards. I think he's quite technical. I think he's quite silky. He has that engine where he's a constant outlet for his teammates. He's smart. He knows what to do 1-2s. He knows when to slow the play down, when to speed it up. Yeah, I'm really starting to take to Caicedo even more right now. You guys know I've been a little bit critical at times, but again, you know, you're seeing Caicedo taking shots outside the box, and I think the thing that really stood out is that when he has that license to also affect the game in the final third moment, we've seen glimpses of this with this like nice little cute passes in behind, the through balls in behind to find runners, etc, etc. You know, this is a player that can affect the game more than just, you know, singly doing that in like defensive capacities, right? I mean, look at that great slide tackle right here. And the little cute death ball to find Noni. I mean, that is like special play. This is the signs of a great football player. And yesterday, he had 102 touches of the ball, 11 possessions won, I think the most throughout the whole game, 15 passes in the final third, 4 fouls won. He was absolutely immense, and he really showed up and displayed his great, incredible box-to-box capabilities. And this is why I will keep saying Essien should be the player that he looks to model this game on, because yeah, he's so moldable. Caicedo could easily be the guy that dictates the play and acts as more of a playmaker. He can be that box-to-box guy with presence in the final thirds. He could be that classic play-breaking DM. He can be kind of anything right now, and I think there's a duty for this football club to really understand, okay, what are we going to do to get the very best out of the most expensive player in Premier League history? There is a responsibility to do that. And it's starting to feel like, could a more box-to-box Caicedo, is that the position and role that could really unlock his world-class potential? So that's the second thing we learned out of the way, my friends. For the second thing we've learned, we must discuss the player who had the most Jekyll and Hyde performance last night, and that was Marc Cucurella. Now, Cucurella equally impressed and frustrated, but for me, he didn't impress to the point where it's like, wow, have you seen the real Cucurella, the one that's been, forever prevalent, but has been hiding due to being used out of position or being used the wrong way? I mean, no, because, he is a left back as well too. He's played many games there throughout his career. And there are some issues and some defaults that I see from him playing in his best position. But equally, he does have other good parts of his game. He's a supportive player. That's why I've seen him. And that's where he does his best work. And I think when he was able to invert to help our midfield, especially being in those midfield lines, it really gave that protection and license, not only for our defence and behind, not only to try and mitigate and reduce some of these Aston Villa counter-attacks down those wide areas, but most importantly, it allowed your Caicedos and Conor Gallagher's to try and affect the game further forward and have more box-to-box presence. That was the key tactical thing, which really gave us that foundation to change the nature of the game against Aston Villa. And this is where Cucurella came in to do his thing. Now let's compare the first half to the second half. And in the first half, there were large moments of that game where Cucurella was holding the width out wide by himself. And you think to yourself, if you needed your fullback to do that, and you had a Maatsen, I mean, I'm not going to repeat myself with that one, but you can kind of see where issues may come, where if Mudryk is the guy in the half space and he's regularly losing the ball, and then you've got Marc Cucurella, who's by himself holding the width, you can see why we become so porous down that left-hand side, right? And this is why we had so many mistakes in that first half. And I think one of the big examples, actually, not only was it the first goal that we conceded where, Mudryk and Cucurella couldn't contain Leon Bailey. It was a 2v1 situation. Bailey was able to keep the ball for as long as he wanted, play through them. And of course, Villa found the overload down the opposite flank, and that caught out the whole team. But for the other occasion, you're looking at the second goal we conceded, and it's Cucurella's defensive body shape and positioning. He's constantly getting moved left, right by direct wingers because his body positioning is awful, his anticipation is bad, his 1v1 defending is not good, and he is not a consistent player that you can leave isolated by himself in defensive situations like that when he's getting pushed back by an opposition winger. And it's no surprise that due to him panicking and not knowing what he was doing, the ball kind of deflects off him into the path of the Villa player, who moves it to Rodgers, and the rest was history. But you know what I noticed? As the halftime whistle blew, the cameras lingered on Cucurella's reaction and expression. And from his reaction, I could see frustration, bewilderment, and self-disappointment. And it felt like Cucurella was sick and tired of being Cucurella, because in that second half, listen, I love to give credit, and I will always do that. It's never that deep for me. He was a completely different player. And I think what helped was how he was inverted in those mid-lines. Now look at this example on screen. You're noticing that Mudryk now is holding the width, and now he's 1v1 against Leon Bailey. Now with Cucurella in a position inverted like this, he has good football IQ in the final thirds. He knows when to trigger that overlap out wide, which he does to perfect timing. Puts a very interesting ball inside the box. He has that Barcelona low-driven cutback pass in his game that we don't necessarily utilize enough of. But this is how we were able to transform the game tactically and nullify Aston Villa's use of width and their wingers by having Cucurella making inverted runs infield and overlapping out wide too. That was the big thing. And actually when Cucurella defends, he's a lot better being a proactive defender, where he knows when to trigger the timing of his press, to close down, to double up with teammates, to win the ball back, to prevent the counter-attacks from happening to begin with, compared to being that guy he must defend by himself 1v1. Due to the limits of his game, of course. Listen, if we're looking to buy a left back, it has to be someone who's equally good at both parts of the game. But if you're going to have to rely upon Cucurella, it feels like using him in this inverted role for now is the best use to mitigate some of the weaknesses that are most definitely clear in this game. Hence why we could equally see the bad parts of Cucurella yesterday and the good parts of what he can offer for his team. For the fourth thing we've learned, Madueke is owning that right hand side. As Mudryk falters, Madueke is beginning to shine. Last night is one of the top 3 performers out of the whole squad, and to have that consistent reliability with someone who's a 1v1 specialist, someone that can take his man on 2 ways, 3 ways, who can cut inside, who can hold the ball, that can outpace them, that has the footwork alongside the body strength. There's a reason why I felt like, you know what, Rafael Leao should be Madueke's role model, because I feel like with the similarities in their physical profiles, how they play, how they dribble, this is a great hallmark for what Noni hopefully could become in the future, right? Last night he completed 6 out of 8 dribbles, 2 key passes, 10 out of 14 ground duels, 79 touches, 46 out of 52 passes. There's a reason why the team felt a lot confident moving the ball to Noni Madueke, finding him. I thought he had a great battle against Luca Digne, coming out regularly on top time and time again. At times, you know, some of the great runs in behind weren't getting found with service, but Madueke's willingness to commit and take his man on, to force his fullback into areas I don't want to be in, you know, winning fouls, creating havoc and danger, regularly getting past Luca Digne. You know, it's the type of potential that we saw from the end of last season. I remember that game against Bournemouth, for example, where he was great. But look, he can commit against 1 man, 2 man. And most importantly, he has end product which he's showing in his game right now. He has that end products. I like seeing him and Cole Palmer linking up and combining. And I like the fact that Noni is aggressive. He stepped up even more in that second half. And it's just like, this is what you were hoping you'd be seeing from a Mudryk. I'm sorry, you might not have the comparisons, I get it. But I feel like I have to, knowing the fact that I think Noni has been under quite a bit of fire, a bit of unfair fire at times. I mean, come on. We're seeing this guy regularly just taking Digne where he wants. Digne couldn't handle him. He couldn't cope at all in this game. And this is an experienced fullback that's played for some massive clubs, played in Europe, played internationally as well too. And Madueke's making him look like absolutely nothing. You know, it's not that simple to do that. You know, nice little Cruyff turn there, slows the play down, looking for the angle to play through, and he takes his goal phenomenally well. And you know what it is? I love when Noni scores, because if you guys follow his coach on social media, these things aren't by circumstance. Everything is trained, worked upon, and there's rigorous training behind what he does. And every goal he scored, he's demonstrated that same type of goal that he's been producing in these little training sessions. And it goes to show that there's a player that wants to learn, that wants to improve, that wants to get better, that focuses. Sometimes his social media exploits in his personal life or how he moves, I think is very unfair and used against him, when this is a guy that's always been a serious pro since 16. That's why he left London, he left Spurs to go to PSV to announce himself there. Not to learn, but to force himself to be a first team player, because he knew and has that faith and confidence in his game, and he knows what he's about. You know, this is why I believe in Noni. With that type of mentality, he can go far. And performances like Aston Villa, where it's one of the best winger performances we've seen throughout the season, I can't dismiss that. I can't ignore that. And for a player that was out of Pochettino's plans, he's forced himself back in. He's making his impact known in this team. And I hope that we see more of this, because this team has been lacking that 1v1 specialist. And I think Noni is the best we have in this squad currently. And for the final thing we've learned, of course, we can't ignore things without discussing Benoit Badiashiles' bad boy performance against Aston Villa. Now, there's one thing I want to say immediately, and that's the fact that I think Pochettino has helped things a little bit by finding that defensive balance in the team. I think when we both had Silva and Dissappoints together, 2 defenders that prefer to be that box-to-box style of defender, I don't necessarily think that complements the team. I think if you have a Thiago Silva who's going to be the cover style defender, you need that proactive, quick, you know, left-footed player alongside him to find that balance. I think that's why Jalaba and Silva have looked good, and I think that's why Silva and Badiashile looked so good last night. I mean, look at that line-breaking pass into find Mudryk. I want to see more of that. I don't think Benoit's been able to show that all the time. He's got the technique to carry the ball, maintain possession. But look how he can like kind of orchestrate and kickstart attacks with his passing. He's got a great weight of pass. I've always been a bit sympathetic personally with Badiashile, because he had no pre-season. He started this season injured. Things weren't going for us well. Obviously, when you're playing, you're not going to be playing your best football instantly. And he has had small niggling looks that have kind of, you know, slowed down his progression this season. I don't think he's someone you give up on. I think he's got great potential in this game, and I think when he's able to play his game, that proactive game where he can, you know, close down markers, try and like nullify the danger before it comes. Instead of being that cover style guy where, listen, he's a young defender. He's not perfect. He can be prone to allowing balls in behind him. His body positioning can be a bit iffy sometimes, but he doesn't see the danger. And at times, he is a bit slow to react to, these movements in behind. But that doesn't detract from what he can do. I mean, look how he wins the ball back. Plays it into Cucurella. And that's what I mean by that proactive style of defending. That's what he was signed for to begin with. That's a great tackle right there to nullify Villa. And this is why Villa's counter-attacking threat in that second half was getting reduced and reduced. And obviously the most controversial moment of this game, barely any contact on Diego Carlos. You're seeing the emotion, you're seeing the reaction, you're seeing the frustration. I think Benmar really came in big last night, really stepped up, played even better in the second half. I think first half he was hard done by a little bit because you're getting no protection or support from Cucurella and Mudryk down your left hand side. But once we improved the structures in the second half, you saw a Badiashile who was even more confident, even more proactive, and even more willing to, turn things around and make things happen for this team, right? So my friends, on that note, they're the 5 things we learned against Aston Villa. Share your thoughts and opinions, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow for some more videos. So I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. Catch you tomorrow. Cool.